Hello, hi Rajiv ji. Kamal here from merasangeet.com and a warm welcome to you on our show Chat in Chai.
Hi, Kamalji. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure and a delight to be with you.
Definitely a pleasure is all ours, Rajiv ji. And before we move on to the queries sent in by our listeners here this week, Rajiv ji, I came across a story in The Guardian. Job brokers with history of violations exploit tech workers on taxpayers' dime. That was the headlines. And we saw your comments as well. So before we move on to the queries, like I said, if you could comment a bit on this news item, it would be great.
Well, typically, this article is actually a very well researched article. This team, The Guardian, is actually a Pulitzer Prize winning publication, and the team did a lot of work. A few months, the reporters who did this, and they had been in touch with me constantly. But I must confess that I find that the article needs a little bit of supplementation because
Uh-huh.
it talks a lot about how US workers can be and are being exploited. And they have named some companies, including Tata Consultancy, saying
Oh,
that Tata Consultancy has been doing this routinely, that they will sue anybody, file a lawsuit against any worker who tries to quit and try to recover money from them, and they do recover money from them. That makes it very difficult for employees who are on H1 to be free. And that was the essence of the article. But I must also add that there are plenty of very, very ethical employers who do everything by the book despite the H1 regulations being extremely complicated. The issue is
uh-huh.
this: is it legal for an employer in the United States to sue an employee who is on H1B if they quit the employer? And the answer is yes and no. There are certain things that the employers should not ask for. For example, liquidated damages. What does that mean? You put a clause in the contract: if you leave us, we'll sue you for $20,000. Okay, that kind of a
Okay.
clause is most probably illegal under federal law. And I have written a huge article on this, almost I think 30-40 page article on this, which was published by the American Bar Association, American Law Institute publications. Um, it's about liquidated damages clause in H1B employees' contracts. And I have indicated in that article, concluded that it's probably always a bad idea to have these kind of clauses. And because of that article, I was approached by these folks at the investigative reporters. And I think attorneys need to be aware of this. A lot of lawyers don't know this, that
Okay.
this is a problem. Courts need to be aware of it. If courts were told that, look, this contract is probably void as again being against public policy, the contracts would not be enforced. Okay, then the
Right.
Department of Labor needs to step in, and they need to start slamming down on companies who try to force their employees to stay back. So the bottom line is, this article is a good article, very well researched, and I fully support those employees who are being exploited, and we help them all the time. We give guidance to
Uh-huh.
them. Their lawyers who are representing them in courts call us. I have given up my time for so many of these causes because this is not fair for an employee to be intimidated into being in a position where they cannot leave the employer, and if they do, they have to be slammed with amounts of money that are completely unreasonable and as well as illegal. Okay, so
Absolutely. Yeah.
there are plenty of employers who are good employers. I
Uh-huh.
I think that part we have missed in this article. We should have had some coverage. Every time I review a contract, and I have reviewed contracts for some of the largest companies in this country, they have
Uh-huh.
those liquidated damages clauses as a matter of routine. They don't even think about it. It's because the lawyers who draft the contracts don't know anything about immigration law. Okay, if they
Right.
knew about
Right.
immigration law, that this particular clause is violative of immigration law, they would never put it in there. Nobody wants to get their client into trouble. So a lot of it is ignorance of the law. People need to be educated. And I personally feel any employee who's in this situation should contact us. They should contact other lawyers who are familiar with these problems and have them provide material to the lawyers who are representing these employees in courts, so that uh, the the litigators can be also educated, because this is also an area of law which is not known to a lot of litigators. A lot of litigators and
Right.
contract lawyers are surprised when we point this out to them. Even personnel lawyers, people who do labor laws, they don't know these laws. Okay, so I
Uh-huh.
think that needs to be rounded up. That said, did you have any particular questions after reading the article?
Yes, Rajivji, I was reading the article, and of course, as you talked, I was just wondering if companies like TCS can have issues like this. Then it would be very, very difficult for somebody sitting in India. Like supposing somebody from India, a friend of mine, wanted to come here in the United States, apply for H1. How does he or she select a company? What is it that they need to look into now?
Well, selecting a company is relatively easy because there are plenty of places. You can do some research on the web and see what the company's reputation is. You can also go to the Department of Labor website. They have public disclosure data. If the company has been ever censored or fined by the Department of Labor for violations, that can be a red flag for you. But remember also that Department of Labor violations by themselves are not indicative of a company's general um, reputation because the regulations are so complex. Even Fortune 50 companies, when they get audited, can sometimes end up in trouble and getting fined. That doesn't mean that they are sleazy, undependable employers. It just means that the laws are very complex. So do look at those things, and you can look at the reputation of the companies online. I would also encourage you. A lot of companies allow you to talk with other employees. So if you
Okay.
select a company, you can actually say, "Can I talk with any other employee who's currently on H1B?" You can speak with other
Uh-huh.
employees, and one dead giveaway is when the company has a policy of, for example, asking for upfront money. If the company says, if you want to process an H1, give us $10,000 or $5,000, walk away from
Right,
that company.
right.
That is illegal from many, many angles. Walk away from that company. Or if the company says, well, you have to pay for our recruitment fees, well, that's the employer's usual business expense. Anything that the employer's usual business expense, it should not be
Mhm.
passed on to you. That is the Department of Labor policy. So that would be one way to look at the company.
Right. And these are the red flags, let's say, we should be looking for. But sometimes, Rajivji, you really do not know if it's actually a red flag there, it's a red sign there. So, what are the warning signs besides, of course, the ones that you've just mentioned? What else should an employee look into? What would be the warning signs he should be careful about?
The article talks about liquidated damages clauses, bonds. If the employer wants you to sign a bond without giving you a lot more in return, for example, if they say, okay, if you sign a bond with us, we'll give you $20,000 extra. Well, that's something I can live with. But if for being an employee they make you sign a bond, that's also, in my view, um, a red flag. Although I'm told again that bigger companies from India, from other countries also, some of the local companies as well, have started the practice of asking for some kind of a liquidated damages clause. It's just not a good sign. When you have that kind of a clause, walk away from it. You are not required to sign it. Also remember, once you are in the United States, in many ways the balance has shifted too far in favor of the employee. And the reason I say too far is because one phone call from an employee, one complaint, can get the employer into a company-wide investigation. We do both sides of this coin. So there are excesses on part of the employer, but there can also be excesses on part of the employees. We have to be fair to both sides. This particular
Okay.
article dealt only with the employee perspective, and it is horrendous. Because if you think about it, the employer is definitely in a superior position financially as well as in terms of comfort. But if you are an employee who's come, like they say in India, crossing seven oceans, you come to this country, and
Right.
you don't know anybody. You are in a very in terms of confidence as well as financially in a very weak situation. So it's only fair that we take care of you a little bit more than we take care of an employer, and the laws do that. So you have a lot of recourses. State government agencies will help you. Federal government agencies will help you. Don't think that you are without teeth. You do have teeth.
Okay. Now here, Rajivji, like you just said, an employee crosses the seven seas, सात समुद्र पार cross करके वो United States पहुंचता है. Probably he's already signed a bond or probably not signed a bond, but then he reaches the United States and starts to work with the company. Thereafter, he doesn't like the company. Um, can he then change the company even if the bond is signed?
Of course, most certainly. He can change the company. There are two aspects to this question. One is under the H1 regulations, can I change companies 10 days after I land? Yes, you can. Absolutely. Um, Will I get sued? That's a different question. That's the question that article addresses. And the answer to even that is you should not be sued. If the employer is suing you, you should be approaching the Department of Labor and telling them the employer is trying to intimidate me and they are asking for unreasonable and illegal terms. But certainly that part, it's not quite clear yet, and Department of Labor will probably step up, and they do sometimes, but it's not a consistent policy. So can you be sued? Yes, but under immigration law, you can change jobs anytime you want.
Okay. So Rajivji, thank you so much. It's really a detailed discussion on the very important article here. Now, can we move on to certain queries here sent in by our listeners as well?
Of course.
The query here is from a regular listener here who's asked a few questions. He says, how long does it take to approve a H-1B visa?
Well, that depends upon whether you file it premium or non-premium. If you file it premium processing, it could be a matter of a few weeks. If you file it non-premium, it can take a few months. About 6-7 months maybe non-premium. Premium, maybe a couple of months, somewhere there in that neighborhood.
All right. Further, he says, if I receive my H-1B visa from an organization or institution, and then after 6 months or about 1.5 years later, I decide to look for another job at an organization or institution for a better position, and the possibility of sponsoring me for another H-1B visa or green card, will this affect me in a positive way or a negative way?
Neither positive nor negative. It's your right. You are exercising a right to change jobs. I don't see any issue with it. From immigration law perspective, we just talked about that. From immigration law perspective, you can change jobs anytime you want. If you have signed any contracts or bonds, you need to have those looked at. And just don't talk to a contract lawyer. Talk to a competent immigration lawyer so that they can also review the contract to make sure there's nothing there that is violative of immigration laws.
All right. So Rajivji, this was the query that we had this week, and thank you so much once again for being a part of our show, Chat in Chai.
Thank you for having me, Kamalji. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Rajivji. Have a great day ahead.
You too, man. Bye-bye. Every other Thursday at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we host free community conference calls. Everybody is welcome to join. Some people post questions ahead of time. You can take membership in our forums. All of the details are there on our website, immigration.com. You can take membership ahead of time, and it's instantaneous. It happens right away. And post your questions beforehand, or you can just log in. The phone number and all are provided: 202-800-8394, 12:30 Eastern Standard Time every other Thursday. We have free apps for both Apple iOS platform for your iPhones and iPads, as well as for Android. Just look for immigration.com, the period dot, and the application should show up.